Okay, I want to share with you my fantastic meal. This is a typical meal that I have, which is as part of my low-carb diet, very low-carb diet, which was originally almost a no-carb diet, but I started to add a few carbs, as you'll see. This meal, everything on the plate here has a purpose and has some value, nutritional value. So let's start with the meat. Here's some chicken and beef. This is a leftover piece of beef. Usually I don't mix them like that, but nonetheless, that's the meat. The chicken is very lightly covered with breadcrumbs, extremely lightly, because breadcrumbs do have a good amount of carbs. I used to douse my meat in breadcrumbs and teriyaki sauce, and use a lot of barbecue sauce for chicken and stuff like that. And then I noticed, to my shock, that those sauces are loaded with sugar, much more than I would have expected. I tend to buy I like to buy the higher quality chicken because it still tastes good even though it's not flavored. So this is like the free range kind of organic kind of stuff. It's really really juicy and good. And this is kind of like a roast beef type thing. It's actually called beef shoulder peppercorn, and it comes prepackaged with some sort of peppercorn sauce, and it's just fantastic. And it's not that high in saturated fat, really. It's quite lean. I do shoot for the leaner meats. Chicken is fantastic. It's any doctor that talks about nutritional diet is always going to have chicken as part of it because it's very low in fat, and it's got no carbs. It's basically pure protein, and it has a lot of other good vitamins in it. So it's fantastic food. With it here is a Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese is allowed as part of a low-carb diet, as long as you're going to look at the labels. But this is Swiss cheese, which has no carb. It has 5 total grams of fat in one slice, about 3 or 3.5 saturated. So a little bit of saturated fat, but not that bad. And you're getting benefits of calcium and probably some other good things that are in cheese. Without the problems of milk and other dairy products is that they have a lot of lactose, which is the milk version of sugar, which is not good for you. It's high in carb. Well, it is carb. It's very high. Okay. So the next thing to look at here is the green. This is asparagus. So you want to have leafy or cruciferous greens as part of every meal. And you want to rotate them. You don't want to have the same one every time. So things like spinach, broccoli, lettuce. If you do go with lettuce, it has to be romaine because romaine actually has nutritional value. Standard iceberg or crisp head, this is a typical American lettuce, does not have much nutritional value. So you don't want that to be your main vegetable. So you can have romaine lettuce, spinach, broccoli, asparagus, all the other leafy greens, kale, on and on. But you want to rotate them as well because they have different types of nutrients in there, and you don't want to just have the same kind. So I tend to rotate between broccoli and asparagus. Spinach I was big on, but I have to take that out now because spinach is the top oxalate food. It's extremely high in oxalate. So if you're a person who is prone to kidney stones, you kind of have to avoid spinach because oxalate, they believe now that oxalate is the source of all these problems with kidney stones and so forth. So it's also controversial whether or not dietary oxalate contributes to things like kidney stones. But many doctors would say cut spinach out of your diet if you are that kind of person, which I am. So I have to kind of take it out just because it's so high. I mean, it's 10 times the height of another high oxalate food. It's just very high in oxalate. Okay, so greens are extremely important. You have to not only they have vitamins, but they have these things you hear a lot about nowadays called phytonutrients or phytochemicals or antioxidants that are good for fighting cancer. I mean, the list goes on and on what these things are good for your health. So they not only in fruits, but they're very high in the green vegetables, particularly the leafy greens. And that's why you want to rotate your vegetables because you want to get the whole spectrum of these phytochemicals, not just the same ones all the time. Okay, over here we have nuts. These are walnuts and pecans mixed. Walnuts are fantastic because they are one of the very few non-fish sources of omega-3, non-fish natural sources of omega-3. So I'm big on walnuts because I want to get my omega-3, which is good for a whole host of things. As you heard, you can research that further, but it goes on and on, heart disease and anti-inflammatory properties and all of that. So, not to mention that walnuts also is a big source of these phytonutrients as well. All nuts are. Pecans are also fantastic for phytonutrients. Almonds, cashews, fantastic as well. But again, those are high oxalate foods, so I have to kind of avoid them. Even pecans are somewhat high oxalate, so I kind of limit my pecans, and I might be phasing them out. So I have nuts as part of every meal. It's kind of a treat. When you have these low carb meals, they have to be a little bit bland because you're not going to have any sugar type sauces or anything like that. So the nuts are kind of a treat part of the meal for me. You might be able to notice there that I put olive oil. I put oil on these nuts, and that oil is olive oil. So olive oil is I consider an extremely important part of my diet. I have it with every meal. It adds flavor to some of this stuff. It's kind of like a sauce for me, moistens it up a little bit, but it's one of the only oils that are just great for you. It's great for your blood lipid profile, which is your cholesterol profile. It increases HDL, lowers LDL. HDL is good cholesterol, increases it, lowers the bad cholesterol, LDL. That's the theory. That's what they believe. And I believe that to be true in practice because one time I went to the doctor and he told me I had a good cholesterol profile. He told me the numbers and they were good. And I hadn't really been on a good diet or exercise regimen in the previous 6 months. So I had been eating a lot of olive oil with my meals. And I kind of chalked it up to that. So I kind of stuck with olive oil. And I still have good blood lipid profile right now. So I think olive oil is fantastic. It gets a lot of good press. In every top 10 food list, it's always in the list. So I recommend to incorporate olive oil into your daily diet. I tend to use a lot of it. I have it with every meal. It's up to you how much you want to have, but I think you should incorporate it. Here you also see blueberries. Okay, so this is kind of my fruit right now. You want to have berries. In a low-carb diet, berries are allowed. But if you're going to go very low, to the point of no carb, and you want to be in ketosis, ketosis is where your body is starved of carbohydrate to the point where you have to burn fat for energy. It's called ketosis because your body burns ketones. I don't fully understand it all, but nonetheless, that's the concept of the Atkins diet and the very low-carb diet, is that you starve your body of carbohydrate, so your body needs to cut into its fat stores for energy. You wouldn't want to have berries in there when you're in the ketosis phase of fat burning because they do provide some carb, not much. This serving here of blueberries probably is providing about maybe 5 to 10 carbohydrates, somewhere in there. Nuts have a little bit of carb as well. This might have 4 carbs. Greens can have carbohydrates as well, but about vegetables too. If you're going low carb, certain vegetables are high carbohydrates, so you can't just have any vegetable you want. There is a limit to it, and greens generally are good as far as carbohydrate, generally low carb. So right now I'm in a low carb phase, but I'm not in a very low carb. I'm trying to come out of ketosis. I've been in ketosis for about like a month and a half, and I shed about 15 to 18 pounds. I think it's a fantastic diet. When I first started it was just like boot camp. It's brutal. It's coming out of the carbohydrate addiction, basically, is what I had, and it was tough. Felt hungry a lot for the first couple of weeks, and then I got used to it, and now I just love these meals. I just think these meals are you feel good about yourself when you're eating such a healthy meal, where everything on the plate has good nutritional value. So now I'm trying to go into a low carb phase where I'm allowing some carbs. That's why I have the berries.